30 feet below the surface of the Mediterranean Sea, in waters so murky you can barely see your hand in front of your face, lies a city. Not the ruins of a city, not the remains, an actual city, streets, harbors, temples, palaces, intact, preserved, waiting. But it's not supposed to be underwater. When it was built 2,300 years ago, these streets bustled with merchants from every corner of the known world. These harbors welcomed ships carrying grain, gold, silk, and knowledge. This was Alexandria, the greatest city of the ancient world, home to the legendary library, the lighthouse, one of the seven wonders, the crossroads of civilization. And then, the sea swallowed it. Not in a single catastrophic moment, not Atlantis-style myth. This was real, slow, inevitable. The ancient Alexandrians watched their city sink. Generation by generation, they adapted, they built higher, they moved inland, they fought against the rising waters with every engineering technique they knew. They lost. Today, marine archaeologists are mapping an entire ancient metropolis beneath the waves. What they're discovering isn't just history, it's a warning, because what happened to Alexandria is happening again, right now, to coastal cities around the world. The sea is rising, just like it did 2,000 years ago, and the ancient Alexandrians left us a message, written in stone, hidden underwater. Are we listening? To understand what was lost, you need to understand what Alexandria was. 332 BC, Alexander the Great, just 24 years old, conquers Egypt. The pharaoh's power crumbles before his Macedonian phalanx. But Alexander isn't just a conqueror. He's a visionary. He looks at the Egyptian coast and sees potential. A thin strip of land between the Mediterranean Sea and Lake Mareotis. A small fishing village. A natural harbor. And he sees the future. Here, he reportedly says to his architect Dinocrates, "We will build a city that will be the link between Europe, Asia, and Africa. A city of knowledge, of trade, of power." He names it after himself. Alexandria. The design is revolutionary. Dinocrates creates a grid-pattern street system, something unheard of in the ancient world. Wide avenues, planned districts, sophisticated water systems. But the most ambitious feature is the harbor complex. Alexandria has not one, but two major harbors. The Great Harbor to the east, sheltered by a natural breakwater, and the Eunostos Harbor, the harbor of safe return, to the west. Connecting them, the Heptastadion, a massive causeway 7 stadia long, about 1,300 meters, linking the mainland to Pharos Island. And on Pharos Island, they build the lighthouse. The Pharos Lighthouse, over 100 meters tall, visible for 50 kilometers at sea. One of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. A beacon that guides ships from 3 continents. Within a century of its founding, Alexandria becomes the largest city in the world. Nearly 500,000 people. Some estimates say closer to 1 million. Greeks, Egyptians, Jews, Romans, Persians, Indians, Africans, every culture, every language, every religion mixing in the streets. The Library of Alexandria holds 700,000 scrolls, the sum of human knowledge. Scholars come from across the world. Euclid writes his geometry here. Eratosthenes calculates the Earth's circumference. Archimedes studies here. The harbor is the economic heart. Every day, hundreds of ships arrive. Grain from Egypt feeds Rome. Spices from India. Silk from China. Glass and papyrus manufactured here ship everywhere. Alexandria is invincible, eternal, the jewel of the Mediterranean. But there's a problem the ancient Alexandrians don't fully understand. A problem that will take centuries to manifest. The city is sinking, and the sea is rising. 1968. A diver named Kamel Abu El Sadat is searching for his friend's boat, which disappeared near Alexandria's eastern harbor. He doesn't find the boat. He finds something else. Massive stone blocks, columns, statues, covering the seafloor like a submerged city, which, of course, it is. Abu el-Sadat reports his discovery. But this is 1968. Egypt has bigger concerns. The find is noted and largely ignored. It takes another 26 years before serious archaeological work begins. 1994. French archaeologist Jean-Yves Empereur leads the first systematic underwater survey of Alexandria's ancient harbors. What his team discovers is staggering. 5 to 8 meters below the current sea level, sprawling across hectares of seafloor, they find massive stone blocks from the Pharos lighthouse, some weighing over 70 tons, port structures, docks, quays, jetties, completely intact in places, streets, paved streets underwater, aligned with the ancient grid dinocrates designed, building foundations, houses, warehouses, temples, statues, sphinxes, columns, obelisks, art that hasn't seen daylight in 1,600 years. Anchors, amphorae, ship remains, the debris of maritime commerce frozen in time. And it keeps going. Every survey, every dive reveals more. In 1996, another team led by Frank Gaudio begins exploring the Western Harbour, Unostos. They find similar structures, an entire port complex, submerged. But here's what makes this discovery so haunting. These aren't random ruins. This isn't scattered debris. The structures are organized, deliberately placed, engineered. The ancient Alexandrians knew their city was sinking. They adapted. They built protection. They reinforced harbors. They elevated structures. It wasn't enough. One discovery particularly chills archaeologists. Stone blocks with slots and grooves indicating they were part of a complex wave-breaking system. The Alexandrians were building elaborate coastal defenses against the sea itself. Imagine that, knowing your city is slowly being swallowed by the Mediterranean, watching water levels rise year by year, generation by generation, trying everything you can think of to stop it, and failing. Before we dive deeper into why this happened, I need you to do something. If you're fascinated by underwater archaeology and dark environmental history, subscribe now and drop a comment. What lost underwater city would you most want to explore? Atlantis, Heraclean, or this real, proven, scientifically documented Alexandria? Because what we're about to uncover explains not just ancient history, but our future. Now, let's talk about why the sea took Alexandria. The Mediterranean didn't suddenly flood Alexandria. This wasn't a tsunami, not an earthquake, not divine punishment. It was something more insidious, more unstoppable. Two geological processes, working together across centuries: sea level rise and subsidence. Let's start with sea level rise. During the last ice age, about 20,000 years ago, global sea levels were roughly 120 meters lower than today. Massive ice sheets locked up the Earth's water. Then the ice melted. The Holocene period begins. Seas rise, rapidly at first meters per century, then more slowly. By the time Alexander founds his city in 332 BC, this dramatic rise has mostly stopped. Sea levels are relatively stable, but, and this is crucial, they're still rising. Just slowly. Research by Goirin, Morange, and colleagues, published in detailed geological studies, shows that Mediterranean sea levels rose approximately 1 to 2 millimeters per year during the Hellenistic and Roman periods. That doesn't sound like much, 1 or 2 millimeters, but multiply that across 500 years. That's 50 to 100 centimeters. Half a meter to a full meter of sea level rise between Alexander's time and the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Enough to flood coastal structures, enough to submerge harbors, enough to force cities to adapt. But sea level rise is only half the story. The other half is subsidence, the land itself sinking. Alexandria sits on the Nile Delta, not solid bedrock, delta sediment, deposited over millennia by the Nile River. Deltas are geologically unstable. The sediment compacts under its own weight. The land sinks, Studies using ancient benchmarks, stone markers placed at known elevations, show that Alexandria's coastline has subsided by 4 to 8 meters since antiquity. 4 to 8 meters. That's 13 to 26 feet of land subsidence. Combined with sea level rise, you're looking at structures built at ancient sea level now sitting 5 to 10 meters underwater. And there's a third factor: earthquakes. The eastern Mediterranean is seismically active. Historical records document major earthquakes. In 365 AD, massive Crete earthquake. Tsunami hits Alexandria. Damage throughout the city. 956 AD. Another major quake. The Pharos lighthouse damaged. 1303 AD. Catastrophic earthquake. The lighthouse collapses. Massive sections fall into the harbor. 1323 AD. Another quake. More structures collapse. Each earthquake doesn't just destroy buildings, it causes further subsidence. The ground compacts. The coastline drops. So imagine this: you're an ancient Alexandrian. Every year, the sea is imperceptibly higher. The land beneath you is slowly sinking. Every few decades or centuries, an earthquake jolts everything downward. What do? You adapt. You build higher. You reinforce harbor walls. You construct elaborate drainage systems. The archaeological evidence shows they tried everything. The submerged ruins of Alexandria aren't just historical artifacts. They're an engineering archive, a record of how an advanced civilization responded to environmental crisis. Let me show you what the underwater archaeologists have found. The harbor reinforcements. Massive limestone blocks, some weighing 40 to 70 tons, placed as breakwaters and dock foundations. These aren't random. They're precisely cut, fitted, and positioned. But here's the interesting part. Geological analysis shows multiple construction phases. The Alexandrians didn't build the harbor once. They rebuilt it, extended it, reinforced it, again and again, because it kept flooding. They'd build a dock at what they thought was a safe elevation. Within decades, it's too low. Water's overtaking it. So they build higher. Underwater archaeologists have identified at least 3 distinct building phases in some harbor sections, each one higher and more robust than the last. A race against the sea, fought across centuries. The city's migration inland. Historical records and archaeological evidence show that during the Roman period, Alexandria's population center shifted. Early Alexandria was centered around the harbors. Makes sense, that's where the money was. But by the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD, the residential and commercial heart has moved inland, away from the coast. Why? Because the coastal areas were increasingly prone to flooding. People voted with their feet. Sophisticated water management. Alexandria developed one of the most advanced freshwater systems in the ancient world. Massive underground cisterns, aqueducts, distribution networks. Partly this was because they needed drinking water, but it also served another purpose: controlling groundwater levels. As sea levels rose and land subsided, saltwater intrusion became a problem. The Mediterranean was literally seeping into the groundwater. The cistern system allowed them to store rainwater and Nile water, maintaining a freshwater supply even as the aquifer became brackish. The Pharos lighthouse modifications. Analysis of the collapsed blocks underwater shows the lighthouse wasn't a single construction. It was modified, reinforced, and rebuilt multiple times. Early blocks show one architectural style. Later additions show different techniques: heavier reinforcement, more sophisticated joinery. They were fortifying it against earthquakes and sea level changes. It stood for 1,500 years. One of the longest operating lighthouses in human history. But eventually, the sea won. What impresses modern engineers about ancient Alexandria isn't that they succeeded in holding back the sea. They didn't. What impresses them is that they tried. For centuries, using every technique available. They adapted, innovated, and persevered. The question is, are we doing the same? Here's where the story becomes uncomfortably relevant. Because Alexandria, modern Alexandria, is facing the exact same threats its ancient predecessor faced. Only faster. Sea level rise, subsidence, coastal erosion. Current measurements show global sea levels rising at approximately 3.4 millimeters per year. That's twice the rate during the ancient period. And it's accelerating. Climate projections suggest by 2100, sea levels could rise by 0.5 to 2 meters, depending on emission scenarios. Modern Alexandria, home to over 5 million people, sits at an average elevation of less than 5 meters above sea level. Do the math. The Nile Delta is still subsiding. In fact, it's subsiding faster now than in ancient times. Why? The Aswan High Dam, completed in 1970, it stops the Nile's annual floods. Those floods used to deposit fresh sediment on the delta, counteracting some of the natural compaction. No more floods, no more sediment replenishment, just sinking. Some parts of the delta are subsiding at 5 millimeters per year. Combined with sea level rise, that's nearly a centimeter annually. In a century, that's a meter. Gone. A 2020 study from the USC Spatial Sciences Institute documented accelerating coastal erosion around Alexandria. In some areas, the coastline is receding by 30 to 100 meters per decade. Beaches are disappearing. Infrastructure is threatened. And beneath the water, ancient ruins are being further degraded. The same environmental forces threatening modern Alexandria are destroying ancient Alexandria underwater. Increased wave action from storms, stronger currents from changing ocean circulation, sediment shifts, all of it eroding, covering, or breaking apart submerged structures. Marine archaeologists are racing against time. Every year, more of the underwater city is damaged. Statues are buried. Structures collapse further. We're losing the evidence of how our ancestors responded to climate change. While we face the same challenge, there's a bitter irony here. The ancient Alexandrians built one of the greatest cities in history. They adapted to rising seas for centuries. They left us a detailed record of their engineering responses. And that record is sinking. Again. If this connection between ancient and modern climate crisis is hitting you as hard as it hit me, smash that like button. This kind of research-heavy content takes time, and your engagement helps. Comment below. Do you think modern cities will adapt better than ancient Alexandria did? Or are we making the same mistakes? Because the final part of this story might surprise you. So what does ancient Alexandria teach us? First, environmental change is slow, but inevitable. The ancient Alexandrians experienced sea level rise at half the rate we're facing now. It still drowned their city. The slowness is deceptive. Each generation thinks, we have time. Our grandchildren will deal with it. But eventually, there's no more time. Second, adaptation is possible, but expensive and temporary. Alexandria fought the sea for 800 years. They used the best engineering of their time. They rebuilt. They reinforced. They innovated. It bought them centuries, but it didn't stop the inevitable. Modern engineering is more advanced. We can build seawalls, levees, pumping systems. The Netherlands has proved that, but it requires massive, sustained investment. And it's never permanent. Eventually, you're just delaying the inevitable. Third, preserving knowledge matters. The Library of Alexandria burned. Much of ancient knowledge was lost. But the city itself, underwater, preserved different knowledge. Engineering, architecture, urban planning responses to crisis. That knowledge is teaching us now. Studies of ancient harbor engineering inform modern coastal defense. Analysis of Alexandria's water systems influences contemporary designs. History is a laboratory. Ancient Alexandria is our test case. Fourth, and most disturbing, the pattern repeats. Sea level rise, subsidence, gradual loss of coastal infrastructure, population migration inland, increasingly desperate engineering responses. Alexandria experienced it over 800 years. We're on the same trajectory, just faster. Miami, New Orleans, Venice, Jakarta, Bangkok, Shanghai. Coastal cities everywhere are facing what Alexandria faced. The question isn't if they'll adapt. They will. The question is, at what cost? And for how long? Walking through modern Alexandria, you can stand on the Corniche, the coastal road, and look out at the Mediterranean. Beautiful, calm, eternal. But beneath those waters, 30 feet down, are streets where people walked 2,000 years ago, markets where they traded, homes where they raised families. They thought their city was eternal too. The underwater ruins of Alexandria aren't just archaeology. They're a message, a warning sent across time by people who faced what we're facing. They're saying, we tried. We built higher, stronger, smarter. We used every technique we knew. And still, the sea took us. Don't make our mistakes. Learn from us, because the sea is patient. It always wins. The ancient Alexandrians left us their city, submerged, preserved, a time capsule of human ambition, adaptation, and ultimately, humility before nature. The question is, will our cities become time capsules too? Or will we finally learn the lesson the sea has been teaching for 2,000 years? If this journey into underwater Alexandria opened your eyes to how history warns us about our future, subscribe to the channel. We dive deep into mysteries that matter. Hit that like button. It genuinely helps this content reach people who need to see it. And here's your mission. Comment with your answer. Which modern coastal city do you think will be underwater Alexandria in 500 years? No wrong answers. Just educated guesses based on what history teaches. I'll see you in the next investigation. Until then, respect the sea, because it remembers everything, and it always reclaims what it wants.